The final matchup. 2017 TFC treble winners, first of their kind, last of their kind, only of their kind, versus 2011 LA Galaxy, face of the league for the longest time, won 2 of the 3 major tournaments, runners-up or quarterfinalists in the CCL and the U.S. Open Cup, one of the most dominant teams of all time. Connor Wright, who is your best team of all time?
This is probably the first tough one that I felt like has come up in a little while, because 2011 is just so iconic for the league for many reasons because of how talented they were. And 2017 Toronto was just so dominant in winning trophies and being successful. I'm going to end up going with Toronto for this one, but this is kind of where I agree with Adam on the Canadian Championship. Had LA Galaxy won the U.S. Open Cup, I'm putting them over Toronto because I think the U.S. Open Cup would be more like a more valuable trophy than the Canadian Championship in this case. But they didn't. So the Canadian Championship is obviously going to be better than no trophy. And that's the edge that pushes me to go Toronto.
Adam.
Yeah, I picked Toronto as well, which it's weird, and it's kind of weird. Like the fact that Toronto I don't feel like they get as much credit as they maybe like when you think of the face of MLS, like Connor just said, you think of that Galaxy team. Like Canadian teams, I say Canadian teams, Toronto doesn't get that kind of like big spotlight being from Canada, as at least as far as I've seen in our kind of media coverage in this country.
You want to know why?
Because it's not the LA Galaxy?
No, because 2018 Toronto FC was one of the worst teams I've ever watched in my life. If they had followed up and became a dynasty like LA Galaxy did, you would look back at that 2017 TFC team and think they were the greatest thing ever. But because they came back in 2018, didn't make the playoffs, didn't push for anything, the only good thing they did was beat Atlanta so we could win Supporter Shield. That is the reason nobody talks about them, is because they had one good year, they won everything, and then just flopped.
So did that Galaxy team become a dynasty because it was arguably the most expensive team by far in the league by then? Because
LA Galaxy became a dynasty because Don Garber gave them a rule so they could become a dynasty.
Right. That Toronto team, other than Giovinco, didn't really have there were no expensive players on that team, as far as I'm aware of.
Josie Altidore cost $6 million. Michael Bradley made $6 million. Giovinco made $8 million, I think.
Yeah, compared to Beckham, who was promised an entire franchise when he signed.
Granted, I don't disagree that they were paid more. But to say that they had no big names or
I'm not saying no big names, but compare the 3 highest paid at Toronto and the 3 highest paid at the Galaxy, and I don't think it comes close.
That's genuinely interesting because I don't know what type of money they were spending in 2011.
I don't either, but genuinely the fact that Beckham came in and the league was like, yeah, you can have a clause in your contract that says in the future we will allow you to build your own franchise. On what planet does that rule exist, that there's a player who can come in and demand a franchise be built?
I completely agree. And I think Connor said it best, that if LA Galaxy did the treble with U.S. Open Cup, no question.
Yeah.
Because he's absolutely right. There are more rounds they have to play. There are tougher teams they have to get through. And it's more influential. But because they didn't, and TFC are still the only team with an actual domestic treble, TFC are the greatest team in MLS history. There is no arguing it. There is no debating it. We can sit here all day and talk about how LA Galaxy paid more for their players and made it look good and became the dynasty that the league was known for. But Toronto FC, records holding, are the best team in MLS history.